Welcome to Fly on the Wall, a podcast where you have the opportunity to listen in on a live coaching conversation. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And now for today's episode.
Hey, welcome to Fly on the Wall. Today I'm talking with David. He's an incredible leader from San Diego, California, and we're talking about qualities you should look for in potential leaders. Let's check out the conversation. Let's dive into it, man. How can I serve you today, David?
Yeah, man. I think for now, a big conversation that I've been having internally and with other people, and I really would like for you to just give me like your kind of like raw and just honest answer is, I think for younger people in ministry, there's been this almost like definition of what successful ministry looks like. And I think to some degree, not for all of us, but to some degree, it was, you speak in the biggest platforms, you have a huge influence, a huge following, maybe even almost like a celebrity aura around you.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? To some degree, it's almost like it was almost even that's what we grew up looking at. So it's not even like, to some degree, it's almost what we've been taught. But how would you define and what would you say to younger people in leadership and in ministry about what a successful leadership look like or successful ministry?
Absolutely. I'll speak. Yeah, I think it's a great question. To say that we don't all seek certain things at certain times, I think would not be honest. You write a book, you want it to do well. You get invited to a big conference, you want everybody to know about it. There's a part of that I think is a constant tension. But so I think that's a reality. I don't know if it's a problem to solve as much as a tension to manage, because I don't know if that ever goes away. The flesh part of us is always there fighting that. I know I've fought that over my life. I feel like I don't fight it near like I used to. I think 7-8 years ago, I really cared. And now I'm just like, man, let's just help people. And let's coach pastors, rescue churches, make a difference, all the stuff that we do. But in answer to like the successful ministry or even a successful leader, I think I would, the way that I always sum it up is this. Here's what I always tell people. It's like in scripture, Jesus said to one, in the parable, to one he gives 5, to one he gives 2, to one he gives 1, and he gives different talents to different people. Talents, of course, in that day was money. But the one thing that I think is interesting in that portion of scripture, and the one thing I always tell people is this. Hey, look, if you're a 3-talent person, that's fine. I think God's sovereignty is what makes a 5. There's only one TD Jakes. I don't
think I'm ever going to be that. Yeah.
Yeah. He just like preaches, one-liners. He tweets everything. He's just like, he's amazing. The way he can drop one-liners and insights on word. I think there's other pastors and leaders that are just amazing. I'm like, man, John Maxwell, the guru of leadership, but I think there's a sovereignty that comes for that. But the other part of it is, here's the thing. Here's what I say. I don't have a problem with you being a 3-talent leader. That's God's sovereignty. The challenge is if you're a 3-talent leader living at a 2-talent level. To me, that's where the challenge is, David. It's not a problem that you're a 3. It's not a problem you're even a 2. Yeah. It's just if you're a 2 and you're living at a 1, that's a problem. So the real reality is this. I think we have to keep our hearts in check and always make sure that we're not seeking the platform or it's more about us than it is about Jesus, and we got to remember that we are called to be co-laborers, not co-stars. And I think that's important that we keep that all in mind, for sure that we keep that in mind. But when it comes to the successful part of ministry, I think it's about, can your head hit the pillow at night? And the person say in their own heart, man, today, I've done my absolute best for the kingdom. If they're a pastor, a leader, whatever, I read, I developed, I learned, I stretched, I developed more vision. I had great meetings. I am doing my best. Can I look at the end of every month? Can I look at the end of every 6 months? Can I look at the end of the year and go, man, I am absolutely squeezing the potential of my life. I'm trying to get everything I can out of it. It reminds me of what Paul said when he says, I've ran the race and I've died empty. It doesn't mean he died broke. I had someone say to me that one time, I don't ever want to die broke. I go, he didn't say broke. What he meant by dying empty is I finished the race. I got to the very end and I died empty. In other words, I gave everything I could. I did the best I could. I don't think, I think there's a lot of leaders that I don't know if they can say that. There's certain, with all the coaching and all the developing and all the relationships we have, there's times where I'm looking at certain guys and I'm thinking, you're so much better. If you would just try a little harder, if you would just read a little more, if you would just be consistent in getting coaching, if you would just get a mentor, if you would just squeeze more out of your life, man, your ministry could go up, more people would find Christ, it could grow, it could expand, all that stuff. If you would just try a little harder. So for me, I think success is determined by the talent that I have and the talent that I use. The line that the master said to the guy with 5 was the same exact line that he said to the one at 2. You faithful, you good servant. I gave you this and you did this. Here's your reward. The same exact line, the same exact praise came to both of them because they lived up to their potential. But the guy that didn't do anything, the Message translation says, you wicked and lazy servant. It's like, he says, you wouldn't even go out on a limb for me. I was like, he's got a lot to say about us not living up to our potential.
Yeah.
So that's how I would define success. Not by, well, if you're doing this, you're doing this. It's by, this is what God's given me. And I know I am absolutely getting all the help I can to get out all the potential I can.
I think the tail end of that is super good. I mean, super good. Is as you're speaking, I'm thinking through what my day looks like, what my focus is on, what I'm aspiring to be or do. Yep. What are some like potential blind spots for younger people and leadership could look like? And it could be like not just an age bracket, like you could be in your 40s, 50s, whatever, and still be fresh into leadership. So what are some like potential blind spots or wrong striving or pursuing that we might do? Because we might take this answer and be like, okay, I'm going to strive, I'm going to do it, I'm going to run the race, but I might be running in the wrong direction. So what are some potential blind spots that you would tell somebody younger in leadership about?
That's a great question. I think that I do think that you need to be striving. I think, and you got to be growing and developing. Absolutely. 100%. I think you need to live out the potential God's given you. I think some of the blind spots that if we're not careful, we can allow our hearts to drift towards seeking praise or towards, man, we feel good, to have a certain amount of campuses as a pastor, a certain size church as a pastor, or a certain whatever. We feel good about that. And there's nothing wrong with feeling good about that, but we kind of, here's where I think the blind spot is that we allow those things to become our identity. That's where it gets really dangerous. If your identity is found in the book that you wrote, the size of your ministry, how many campuses you have, what conference you were invited to speak at, if your identity is wrapped up in all of that, that is an enormous blind spot, I think, for individuals. And it is going to head towards disaster, because what happens when you don't get invited, or what happens when that doesn't happen, or what happens when the book doesn't do well, or the church this, or the ministry that? What happens when that doesn't happen? Then all of a sudden, if your identity is wrapped up in what you do rather than who you are in Him, then this is inevitably two things. One, it's inevitably going to hurt you. And it's a constant pursuit of more, because only more will make you feel good about yourself.
Oof.
That's a dangerous place to be, because I got a water right here. If your identity's wrapped up in that, and it's a constant seeking of more, it's like drinking water and never quenching the thirst. I can just drink more success, but it's never, ever going to fulfill anything. So I think the danger blind spot, the biggest one, David, is, as any pastor at any level, when their identity, or leader, when their identity is wrapped up in what they do rather than who they are. because that will be a constant pursuit that will ultimately end, I think, in pain. But it is, again, it is a pursuit that will never, ever be satisfied. The only answer for you to be satisfied is more. And once you don't get that more, then bam, you're just right. I mean, come on. How many times do we see? Think about it. Now, I know this is leaders. Think about this though. How many celebrities on some Netflix special have you saw that went off the deep end? Because they were a childhood star, or they had 9 movies, and all of a sudden you don't even hear about them. And why? Because their identity was wrapped up in all of that. And as soon as that was taken away, so was their identity.
Yeah. What do you think are some like red flags if you might be there, but it is a blind spot, so you're not aware? What are some like red flags or tell signs, or is this the 360-degree leadership assessment?
Probably. If there's a blind spot and you don't know about it, I don't know what I'm going to say to help you. But I think 360s are great, by the way. 360 evaluation, people that are above you, beside you, and below you that are, seeing who you are and speaking into your life. One thing is this, I guess it can be a blind spot, but I would bet more often than not, if the person would slow down long enough to examine what their heart and internal thoughts are saying during a moment, they would probably be, if they would just be mindful of like, okay, I'm going to see if I really have this blind spot. Okay. So anybody that's watching and listening to this podcast or watching it, if you want to know if you have that blind spot, whenever something happens that kind of like, oh man, my ministry's not going good, or that, or this didn't happen, or whatever, watch what's going on in your heart. Watch what's going on in your inner thoughts. I think in the inner thoughts, are you starting to say, why wasn't I invited to that? Why didn't that happen for me? Why does that guy's church grow faster than mine? Why does those doors open up for that guy? That doesn't make sense. If we are over here going, man, and we're going through all those minds, we are probably down that path of, why wasn't I part of that? Or why didn't that work out for me? And it's probably a sign that something's going on inside of our heart. If we have a problem celebrating other people, that's definitely a warning sign and a red flag. If we secretly want someone else to fail,
that's
secretly we will never admit it.
No.
But if we secretly want someone to fail, and we secretly can't celebrate someone's win, that's a warning sign. What's happening in your heart, what's happening in your mind, those are warning signs. And I think if you will just step back for a moment, really examine your heart and your mind, you'll probably find the blind spot.
Oof. All right. That's a good one. I think that's a really great answer to a pretty loaded question. Speaking of maybe a little bit away from a lead pastor perspective, we've talked a lot about like, and you're very vocal about building a team, surrounding yourself with good people. What does that look like in a very practical sense? Like, when you were lifting up, your core team around you or your staff around you, or maybe they're not even paid, maybe they're just high capacity volunteers. Like, what are some non-negotiables? What are some qualities? What are some traits? What are some like telltale signs that you're like, man, this guy's it, or this gal is it, or the opposite? I'm never bringing them into my inner circle. They're going to stay in, they're
out. They're being voted off the island.
Exactly.
No, I think those are great questions. I don't have a particular order for you.
Okay.
But I can tell you the things I really like to see. Let's go with the automatics, because if I don't say them, then someone's going to say he doesn't care about any of that. So I better say it now.
You know what? That person needs to check their blind spot.
Check their heart.
How do your answers make them feel at that moment?
So I think the obvious are, hey, they love the Lord, they love the kingdom, and they have great character. Now, let's assume all that's it. Now let's talk. I want to know, I can tell you one of the big things I want to know is self-driven. do they flat out get stuff done? I don't want to spend my time having to constantly motivate someone, constantly make sure that they're running the path, keep track of my to-do list and theirs. I don't want to do that. I want to know, hey, man, I'll get it done. I'm running fast. One thing I've always said is if you hire hard, you'll manage easy. So run them through the filter. Like, is this person hire hard? Like, are you really driven, self-driven? Do you get stuff done? Can do you move forward? Do you think on your own? Do you just like, man, look, we got a problem over here, solve it, got it. And then boom, they come back 8 days later. All right, here's some of the thoughts I found out or what's some of the things I found out. Here's some thoughts on it. Where do you want to go from here? It's like, or they come to me and go, hey, I found here's an issue that I don't know if you're aware about. And here's some of the things I think that we could do to solve it. I'm already moving down that path. Let me know. Just people that are driven. I don't have to sit there and crack the whip. It's just like, it's getting done. They're done. It's good. Self-driven is huge to me. I want to know that they just flat out get stuff done. Another big characteristic for me is loyalty. I think there's a huge difference between loyalty and faithfulness. You've heard me say this before, but faithfulness says I won't talk bad about you, but loyalty says I won't let anybody else talk bad about you. I want loyalty. It doesn't mean that we're always going to see eye to eye. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be wrong. It doesn't mean that you can't confront me. It doesn't mean any of that. I'm not that kind of leader. If I do something wrong and you need to confront me, do it. I don't know, whatever. Let's talk.
Yeah.
But I just got to know that my name is safe in your mouth. I got to know that you're going to have my back. I got to know when someone brings up the name, like, oh man, that Chris, wait, that the person's going to go like, hey dude, that sounds like a conversation you should have with Chris, not with me. Yeah. And I have to see that. I love self-driven. I love watching people that are incredibly loyal. I would say another one is they have kind of an uncommon positive attitude. They just believe the best, want the best, hope for the best, cheer people on. They're encouragers. Man, they see the glass half full type of people, and they're just like, we can do this. We can do. Negativity drives me insane. I don't want it around me. I don't want to be near it. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like being honest. If there's a problem, let's address it. Let's not be like, oh, I don't want to put a positive spin on negative data. I think people especially people in the Pentecostal world, I'm Assemblies of God pastor, we're amazing at putting positive spin on negative data. Our church ain't growing, but man, we're having great services. No one's coming to Christ, but we're having a great time together.
You should see the quality of the people that are here.
Man, we're like, that's not that you're having great services is negative. I'm not saying that, but it's like, no one's coming to Christ, no baptisms, but somehow we spin it to be a positive. We all do it, but I've done it before. And I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying to not be honest. Sit in a room and go, dude, this portion of our ministry, like, we're not delivering at all. Oh, you're right. It stinks. We're doing horrible. How do we fix it? Got no problem with that. That negativity, I don't get into that. So those are a few things, man. And the overall kind of a team encourager, team builder. So those kind of four things. I love people that are self-driven. I love loyalty. I love people that have an incredibly good attitude, and I love people that are team players. Those can encourage each other, high five each other, build up the other person. They're not trying to bring the other person down. They're not secretly wanting someone to fail so they look a little bit better, all that stuff. So those are some of the things that I really look for. And I think that they can be found in people that are not full-time staff or even paid. I think you can find that. I'll tell you something funny that happened one time is I was at a conference and I was speaking, and guy raises his hands and he's like, hey man, you talked about having an uncommon great attitude. Because literally the question was, what are characteristics of the team members you want? And I answered them just like I answered you. And I got to the third or fourth one on uncommon positive attitude. Guy raises his hands. He goes, what do you do with a staff member that has a bad attitude? I've talked to him several times and he hasn't changed it. And I said, fire him. And everybody started laughing because that's all I said was fire him. And everybody started laughing. And then I said, look, I go, you can get a bad attitude from a volunteer for free. Why are you paying for it? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I can get one for free. I don't need to pay for this. And so anyway, those are a few things that I think are really important. I think if you get those things, self-driven, loyalty, uncommonly positive attitude, team player, man, you get someone like that, you get 3 or 4 people surrounding you like that, then you can run for miles.
Yeah, I think I had another question for my last question, but is that something you can also develop? Like when you're leading a team, the character part, I mean, I know you strengthen it and stuff, but like those 4 qualities, is that something you can, as a leader, be intentional about developing? Are you more searching? Some has the potential and then you bring it out of them?
Yeah, well, that's a great follow-up question. Man, great follow-up question. I'd have to, yeah, that's a great question. I would have to say number 4, team building. I think if I wouldn't say is the easiest, but if their heart is good, but they don't naturally know how to verbalize encouragement, I think that can be taught. Like, hey man, look for opportunities to encourage people. Look for opportunities to high five someone. Hey, when someone says that compliment, like, I think you can do that as long as their heart's right.
Yeah.
Now, if they come in with a heart like I'm number 1 and I got to make sure everybody secretly fails and all that, man, now you're doing heart surgery, and that's totally different. I think that's a big defining difference. Is it a heart issue or just a practical issue? Like, some people just like, oh wow, I see how you encourage people. I need to do that. Like, their heart's right. They just have never had that model for them.
Yeah.
And I think if it's a practical issue, yeah, I think it'd be taught. If it's a heart issue, man, that's a God thing that he's going to have to change their heart. And if it's a heart issue, I don't think I would have brought them on the team to begin with. I would think, let's deal with your heart first and get you there. The team member part, changing attitudes. The older you get, the harder it is to change. Loyalty, man, if they haven't exercised it in their life in the past, it's hard to change. And there's a reason.
Yeah.
And then self-driven. Wow, that was, to me, is the most difficult. I mean, how many times, we hire people and then we spend hours trying to motivate them. Like, I got to motivate you to do the job you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. So that, I think each quality could be viewed differently. I think the team member, like, you could just show them practical things. Loyalty and self-driven, I don't know if that's practical as much as it's just either who you are or you're not. You've developed it yourself. I'm not saying you couldn't develop it, but and I think that, with God's help you can. But man, for you to take on 2 or 3 years of developing that in someone, that's hard to do.
Yeah.
So
well, that's a tall order for you. Like you'd be investing time that you could invest in leading into like the potential of somebody being on your team and helping you carry this load instead of carrying the load for those 3 years. I don't know if that makes sense. Like
100%. Yeah.
It's a big time management of like, maybe you do have the capacity to do it because you're doing it with 1 and you have 5 people helping you carry, the organization.
Right.
So I think that is a really, really fair answer.
Well, and it might be doable.
Yeah.
You might be able to work with them, but it's like you said, it's like, okay, so every hour I work, I got to work 15 hours for every 1 hour I work with this person.
Yeah.
But I'm going to get them there. Okay. Meanwhile, the other 5 aren't moving as much as you want them to. Your vision is sort of leaking, but because you're just trying to get. Here's the thing: here's where the mistake is. Natural people that encourage and coach. You're a natural encourager and coach. I'm a natural encourager. Like, I want to bring out the best. I believe in people. I want to cheerlead them. You can do it, man. Go for it. You can write that book. You can launch that ministry. You can do it. That is way who I am. But if I'm not careful, I have to be careful of this part, because I'm a natural encourager. I'll be grabbing someone and going, you can do it. And maybe they're not designed. I don't know, but I just start thinking they can. And if I'm not careful, here's what happens. Instead of taking out of them what God put in them, I try to put in them what I think God left out.
Wow. Oh, that's so good.
I don't mean to.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you can do this. And maybe God's going, I didn't even design them for that. You're motivating them towards something, and you're telling them they could, when that's just not what I've designed them for. And I think we have to be careful of that, of how much time we spend. But again, go back to the vetting process.
Yeah.
Come on your team. I always liken it to baseball because I'm a huge baseball fan. It's like when you're on, when you go to the majors, you're going to grow. When you get called up to the majors from AAA, you're going to grow and get better. But you already have to be at a certain level to even get on the field.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah.
in about 8 years, that guy will be good. They're not thinking that. They're thinking he's going to grow and he's got potential, but he's already has to be here. They think he can get here, but to even get on that field, you already got to be here.
Mm.
What is that here for you as a leader? Like to even get on that field, on your team, on your staff, what's that here? I think you have to be clear what that is.
That's a great question. Yeah, plan that out. What's the standard? What's the field? What's that?
Yeah, what's the vetting? What's the quality? To get on that field, Okay, now maybe it's like, okay, a volunteer, it's one thing. Leader, it's another thing. Staff member, it's another thing. But there's got to be clarity, like, especially paid staff. I mean, it's like, it's got to be clear, like, you already have to be at this certain level to even be on the field. And you got to know what that looks like. So, yeah.
Cool.
We got a little bit of time left, a couple more minutes left. Any last minute thought or question? One more question?
Yeah. You hit on loyalty, and I think for a lot of people that might almost be a trigger word on both sides, like lead pastor, not lead pastor. When it comes to transitions, what do you think? I know you walked through a transition recently in your just your local church.
Yeah.
So I think you can be a great voice as to what does healthy transition look like. What are some of the tell signs of what it looks like on both sides of the conversation? Like, what does that look like without compromising the loyalty factor?
You're talking about the transitions of leadership?
Yeah, like it could be either like let's say a youth pastor, a key volunteer, maybe you as the lead pastor,
right.
You're being transitioned. Like, what does that look like? What are some healthy ways?
Yeah. It's interesting. I just read something. I think it's in the next 10 years, 430,000 ministers in the nation will transition out of ministry. Some of them are just going to quit, and some of them are transitioning. They're ready to retire or whatever, but they're transitioning out of ministry. So transitioning becomes a big thing. There's a couple thoughts. One, if you're the one transitioning out and you're helping to transition someone in, it can really become a mess really fast. I was just working with a pastor this week where he's like, I transitioned in, this guy retired, he's still here at the church, he's starting to undermine me. He's retired, but he's in the front row undermining me. He's having conversations with staff, even though he's retired, going, well, you know how I would have done it, and it's like, here we go, someone didn't have a conversation, or maybe they did, I don't know. But the person transitioning out has to absolutely be a cheerleader for the person transitioning in. They absolutely have to start assigning over authority. They have to absolutely be saying, hey, you should really talk with that person. They're in charge now. People need to see that you believe in that person and you've put them in. And if you just do that a few times as the person transitioning out, you'll be fine. Literally, you don't have to do it forever. It doesn't have to happen for years. Yeah. You do that for the first 4, 5, 6 months to 10 or 15, 20 people that approach you, and it'll just die. And everybody will know you believe in that person's coming in. Now the person coming in has to honor that person forever. Hey, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Pastor Joe. I wouldn't be here. I know what shoulders I'm standing on. I realize that. I honor him. I take care of him financially. I take care of him verbally. I take care of him in all ways. I do whatever I can to honor him. Honor. I think honor is part of heaven's currency. There's something about it that happens when it happens. I think God gets honored. I think people get honored. I think the church see it. I think people find health in it. This person needs to honor this way, and this person needs to honor this way, and take care of that person to the best of their ability, and do something for them, bless them in some amazing way. I think that's so important that there is and that's the big word I would say is honor.
Honor.
And then the other thing I would say is healthy enough to have difficult conversations with each other. 6 months into it, if one of them hears something bad, one of them feels a little like, man, they're not treating me, have the conversation. Hey man, I'm not feeling honored. I felt like we set up this, but it just seems like lately, like a couple days ago, I heard this, whatever.
Yeah.
Honor and then vulnerability with each other is important. And if you don't do that, I think what happens is the two pastors, I think they underestimate the kingdom damage that happens. They're like, oh, I'm just hurting him or he's just hurting me. Maybe we just think that's like, oh, no, you have no idea the kingdom damage you're creating because you're the leaders.
Yeah.
Everybody's looking to you. So, man, give honor, transition smoothly, give honor for the rest of your life. Verbal honor this way, verbal, maybe financial, whatever, honor this way, but lots of honor. And then if there's ever a tension, have the honest conversation, be transparent with each other. So, yeah, I hope that helps, dude. But hey, man, we're out of time. I got to jump on my next Zoom call, but always good to see you, David.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep being a great leader. You are the man. All right, dude. I'll see you, bro.
All right. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for stopping by today. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to be on the lookout for more podcasts from Fly on the Wall. See you next time.